Section 7. Monks, Nuns, and Friars. Religion was important to all Christians in the Middle Ages. Some men and women, however, solemnly promised to devote their lives to God and the Church. Monks were men who joined monasteries or communities devoted to prayer and service to fellow Christians. This way of life is called monasticism. Men became monks for many reasons. Some were seeking refuge from war, sickness, or sinfulness. Some came to study, and others were attracted to the quiet life of prayer and service it offered. So, refuge from war means trying to find a safe place from war. They weren't going to fight in war. They were ill, perhaps hoping to be cured or to help their sickness. They might have committed a sin, a bad crime, and this was their way of seeking forgiveness. And others, you'll learn it's a very quiet life. You're not really interacting much with the public. You're living your life dedicated to God. The man who developed the monastic lifestyle in Western Europe was Saint Benedict, and here he is in a monastery. And this is him again. In the 6th century, he founded a monastery in Italy. This is that monastery today. His followers, known as the Benedictines, followed Benedict's rule or instructions. Benedictines made 3 solemn vows or promises: poverty, to own no property; chastity, never to marry; and obedience, to obey their leaders. So if they're going to fully commit to God and their faith, they do not have to worry about possessions, to worry about another person, and to obey their leaders who are guiding them. Monks spent their lives in prayer, study, and work, and even attended 8 church services every day. Other duties included caring for the poor and sick, teaching and copying religious text. Since most monasteries were self-sufficient, monks spent much of their time working. They farmed their land, tended their gardens, raised livestock, and sewed clothing. Most monasteries were laid out around a cloister, a covered walkway surrounding an open square. On the north side was the church, and the kitchen and dining hall were on the south side. On the third side was the dormitory. Oh, there's a picture of a monk right here. And the dormitory or sleeping quarters is where monks slept in small cells, often on beds of wood. So a very simple, not complicated, self-sufficient lifestyle. They farm their own land. They're copying down text. They're helping other people. The library writing room, called the scriptorium, on the 4th side of the cloister, provided monks a place to copy books by hand and create beautiful, illuminated manuscripts. By copying rare documents, monks kept knowledge of the past alive. Much of what we know today about both the Middle Ages and ancient times comes from their important work. So for many of you, you might not willingly choose this lifestyle, but this lifestyle actually helped maintain history. And these are some examples of illuminated manuscripts. These are all done by hand, takes many, many hours. They're copying things down. They're drawing these little pictures. And keep in mind, there's not a big printing press. So this is literally, it's hand copied by people, which is why books were very rare and sort of part of the reason that not many people had the opportunity to learn to read. Both monks and nuns joined religious orders. Each order had its own distinctive rules and forms of service. The Benedictines were only one such group. Monastic life was one of the few opportunities open to medieval women who did not wish to marry. Women who became nuns lived in convents, which were communities run in the same way as monasteries. Nuns did most of the same types of work that monks performed. And this is an example of a cloister that nuns would live in, or even monks might have a similar thing. It's a beautiful garden surrounded by the building that they were in. Many nuns became important reformers and thinkers. For example, in Germany, Hildegard of Bingen founded a convent and was an advisor to popes and other church officials. She also wrote books in which she criticized some of the practices of the church. Friars. Some people wanted to live a religious life without the seclusion of the monastery. A famous example was Saint Francis of Assisi, who was born to a wealthy Italian family, but gave up his money to serve the poor. He founded the Franciscans, an order that is also called the Little Brothers of the Poor. And this is an image of a friar, but just it's very similar to monks, but they were much more out in the public. Instead of living in monasteries, Franciscan friars traveled among ordinary people to preach and care for the poor and sick. They lived in complete poverty and had to work or beg for food themselves and the poor. For this reason, they were also called mendicants, a word that means beggars. With his friend Clare, Francis founded a similar order for women called the Poor Clares. Francis, who loved nature, believed that all living things deserved respect. For this reason, he's often pictured with animals. To many, his example of faith, charity, and love of God represents an ideal Christian living. And that is the end of section 7.